Yes, I did.
Okay, good.
And I'm recording.
All right.
Hey.
Good morning, Hank and Kathleen. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning, Megan.
Good morning,
Good
Megan.
morning.
Everyone, Russell.
Good morning, Russell, everyone. Brian.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We will start in just a couple of minutes, right at 10:30. Good morning, Leslie.
Yes, there's Leslie.
And Irene, welcome, everybody. Cathryn.
Reed and Charlie Wagner. There's a name I recognize. A new auntie. Her brother just
Oh.
had, and,
Really?
and sister-in-law just had a baby.
Yeah, us too.
Oh, did you really?
Well, she was due yesterday, so our niece was due yesterday, so we're waiting in anticipation.
Yeah.
One minute to showtime.
There we go.
We're all waiting in anticipation as the clock moves.
The countdown.
So I'm going to have to mute everybody. So Cathryn and Brian, just unmute yourselves to speak.
And Brian, I'll just start and then hand it over to you. Ooh, it is 10:30. So I would like to welcome everybody to our Sunday morning coffee house on behalf of the Center for Functional Nutrition. It's a great pleasure to have all of you here this Sunday morning, and we are very eager to begin. And I would just like to begin with our mission statement. We have a family business, and this is our mission statement: to better people's lives and to be a force for good in the world. And this is one thing that we've been doing now for about 3 months or so that has just been something we've really enjoyed and learned so much from. And we're very eager to share this with everybody. So that's why we're here today. And Brian, I'd like to hand the coffee house over to you.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you everyone for being with us this morning. Wherever you are joining us from, I can tell you here in Massachusetts, it is hot, extremely hot, but hopefully if you're anywhere close to water, you're gonna be enjoying that today. So I wanna welcome you all, and we are graced today to have Cathryn Taylor with us, and she's going to be leading us in a conversation around how to have uncomfortable conversations comfortably. She's going to dive into a lot more detail around that. And I would just like to say, Cathryn has been doing her work for over 40 years. She is an absolute master in her field, and she is also a very, very dear friend. She's the author of the best-selling book, The Inner Child Workbook, and that came out in 1991, I believe.
Mhm.
And she's also authored many, many other books. And I'm very excited to be here with Cathryn today, and for us all to engage in this work with her. She has a very unique and talented way of diving right into the source of what's going on, and especially in the world and the climate that we're in today. I have no doubt Cathryn's going to give us a lot of value and perspective. So I won't take any more of her time. Cathryn, it's a sincere pleasure, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity again. I think the third time that I have talked to the coffee house gathering, and the first time we were beginning to really deal with the coronavirus, and we were all raw in terms of finding where our place was on that continuum of tension, depending on how it was impacting us. And we were talking about where we were on the human chain of healing, and how we could contribute, and how we could really be in conversation with our soul, as well as the fearful or fragile part of ourselves, which I always call the inner child, so that we could show up for finding our place on that continuum. And then we were all still reeling with that, and we were hit with the George Floyd death and the social unrest. And to me, that was just the next pandemic. The first pandemic in my world was a result of all of the overstimulation and the perspective where at some point our bodies had to start manifesting that. No matter what the source was and all the controversies around that, still it was the physical human form that began to take that on and have to deal with it, have to resolve it in a multitude of ways. And then that kind of gave way to the social unrest, to that emotional pandemic that has been laying dormant for years, but now it's coming to the surface. It's like the whole planet is on this cleanse, and we're dealing with it physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And so I wanted to start as kind of this next wave for me is the conversations that we need to have. And of course, I was inspired by the media and all of the invitations to have, especially those conversations about diversity and about race and all those that we're looking at now. And it's important. It's important that we're able to show up for those conversations. I feel like ever since 1986, when I really started conversing with my own inner child, which then gave way to me talking to my higher self, that I have been committed and dedicated to having those kinds of conversations, not only with myself, but really dedicating my career to helping people be present and really dealing with the emotional fabric of that, but always under the light of what's our soul trying to get us to confront here, so that we stay vertical. Now, I had the extreme honor, pleasure, whatever it was, that my soul plops me right in the middle of San Francisco in the late 60s and early 70s, when we were in a similar situation as we are now. And for the last kind of month or 2 months, I've really been reflecting a lot back on that time, because that was when everything was erupting. It was in, the middle 60s, where we were really starting to see all the marches that were happening with the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement. And it was, I think, in San Francisco around 1965, when Werner Erhard started EST, and the whole human potential movement was erupting just 150 miles from where I lived at Esalen, with Michael Murphy and the whole grouping of bringing people together. And I remember being in those first encounter groups where we'd sit in circles and we'd just confront the hell out of each other, basically, and really force ourselves to face feelings that we had not been prepared to deal with. I often said, and it even made it in my book, that our generation, those that were born, kind of the baby boomer generation, we were really the first generation to be raised to be part of a world that absolutely did not exist by the time we came into adulthood. We'd gone through all of the unrest, the Vietnam Wars, the assassinations, the world that my parents knew and that they trained me for. It didn't exist in the 60s and 70s when I got there. We were forced to come into this whole internal landscape of feelings. And so that's what erupted. And I get that same feeling and that same need now, except now it's even more spiritual, because we have so many more tools now to deal with our emotional unrest and our emotional landscape. And it's just a multitude of ways to show up. But now we're invited to take that more into a social interaction in a way that we've never been invited to do. In the 60s and 70s, we were really searching not for diversity, but for how we were the same. And if you've ever studied Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that was what we needed to do at that point in time. We needed to move away from the separateness, and that's what the whole concept of namaste means. I see the divinity in me as I see the divinity in you. It's like we were beyond gender, we were beyond race, we were trying to move into how we were all the same. But now we're at a completely different landscape. Now we need to look at our diversity, and we need to look at it from an internal point of reference where we can show up for the conversations and stay present. And we're moving into that with a real rawness. Everything that we were relying on has been taken away at this point. We don't even know how to go to Target and be safe, let alone get into gatherings and be safe. We're no longer in the aftermath. Well, we're no longer in the rawness that we were when I last spoke to you, but we're not in the aftermath of it yet either. We're not beyond the impact of the coronavirus. It is still riveting through us, and we don't know in what ways. You turn on the news and you don't know which side to believe. So we're having to rely on our own resources to find our truth, because we're not going to find it externally. We're just not. Everybody's going to have their own place on that elephant, and it's important for us to see where we land on that, but it doesn't mean that that's our truth. And it doesn't mean that everything that we're hearing about the racial unrest is our truth. We have to find that for ourselves. And I love some of the terms that are coming to light with that. The white privilege, which makes everybody that's white feel uneasy. Well, where does that uneasiness come from? We have to look at not only our inner child and where we've learned that and what that's speaking to, but what's our soul wanting us to really master with that? How far back in our soul's history does that go? If we've all been everything, then where is that thread for us? Or the white fragility, or the what was it that Matthew McConaughey introduced one in the series that's being presented by Emmanuel Acho, I think that's how his name is. You know, uncomfortable conversations with a Black man. That's what inspired this whole series, keeping those uncomfortable conversations going comfortably. And I love what he's doing. And he had Matthew McConaughey on as one of the guests, and he was introducing the concept of white allergies. Now, this is a community that is dealing with our nutritional allergies. We know how we can be allergic to wheat, allergic to sugar, and not even knowing it. I've worked with addiction since 1985, and I began dealing with my own addictions to wheat and sugar, oh boy, I guess in around the same time, and for a variety of reasons. I had no idea the biochemical impact of my consuming or ingesting sugar or wheat, and how I just felt like a Mack truck anytime I ate wheat. With sugar, the next day, it's like I would be so biochemically imbalanced that I'd be cheerful. The first couple of years of my marriage with my husband, anytime we'd go out for dessert, the very next day, Siri's trying to talk to me. The very next day, I'd be in tears talking about how I wanted to go back to San Francisco and leave Minneapolis. And, you know, it was all biochemical. I didn't know that at the time. And since then, I've worked with so many people that are biochemically triggered, and they don't even have any idea about that reactivity. And so now we're being invited to really look at that. So when we're going to show up for these social allergies, we've got to have our physical and emotional and spiritual hygiene really intact in order to tolerate it, in order to really stay present for it. Because what we do when we get into these uncomfortable conversations, especially with others, is we either engage in wanting to be right. And so even before they finish their conversation, we're thinking about our rebuttal. Or we get nervous and we go into the retreat, or we just shut down. We go into the just complete freeze of it. And we don't even hear what they say. And then we just start avoiding even being part of this self-exploration. But what I learned by going through the 70s in San Francisco, and what I'm really excited about now, is there's such a rich opportunity here, because we are being so provoked every place we look, that if we're willing to really do our inner work and to stay present, and to have first that difficult conversation with our higher self. With how do we do that? Well, we do that by spending time with our higher self. We do that by being even more committed to our 15, 20, 30-minute meditations, where we just come into kind of that tabula rasa and we let our soul speak to us. And then we use the places where we get provoked to really pull the thread, not so much on how we need to convince the other person that they're wrong or we're right or whatever, but what's our internal response to that? The way that we begin to be comfortable is we begin to be accountable. And accountable with some sort of enthusiasm instead of fear. Because if we're on board with our higher self, and we have the tools to begin to identify what our hot spots are, what's our emotional response to that? Like after a conversation, if we even process it, if we get better and better at it, we can do it in the moment. Almost any conversation that I have, which brings any discomfort, I'm tapping. I've talked about EFT in every conversation. I also do the TRE, which is the tension, I can't remember what it means, the tension releasing exercises. We have to do our inner work to show up and keep our energetic balance so that we can begin to neutralize the energetic blueprints that come from all the ways that we've been programmed. And that's where the fragility, the allergy, the privilege, all of that begins to come in. And we're being provoked on so many levels right now that it is going to stimulate conversations of a great variety. And we cannot show up for it. We can keep our head buried in it, but we're going to miss an opportunity. By the same token, we don't have to get lost in it. I know people that are just addicted to watching TV. That's not a balance. That's not taking time to find where their truth is. And one thing I want to inspire, and this is a series, today I'm just giving the overview of it. But what I want to inspire in this series is a willingness, a commitment, even bigger than that, an enthusiasm for really having those internal conversations that we can then bring into the external world. The whole thing that changed in the 60s and 70s was that we needed to shift from being externally referencing to internally referencing. We could not rely on the external triggers to really give us our truth. And we're right back there in a much bigger way now. And now it's universal. This is the first time in the history of the planet that we saw it with coronavirus. We saw it with the protests. It didn't just happen in Minneapolis, where I'm speaking from. It didn't happen just in San Francisco or Atlanta or New York or in our states where it's just, so prevalent. It happened all over the world. We're being universally supported. And you can bet we're being universally supported by all the energies that are coming in now. I was reflecting in the last couple of weeks about 1987, August 16th of 1987. I was at Mount Tamalpais with the first global event of the harmonic convergence. And that was the first time that we started hearing about the astrological alignments that were bringing in this whole heart opening. And then that was followed in, I think, November of 2003 with the harmonic concordance, I think it was what it was called. And that's what opened up the soul connection. And then that was followed by 12/21 of 12, where the new beginning, the ending of the new beginning. Well, obviously, it wasn't the ending, but it was the beginning of this whole awakening that we're seeing now. So it's not like this is new. This is just the what I call, again, the apathy math of it, not the aftermath, because we're in it. And so many of us are just being apathetic. It's like, do I wear a mask? Do I not wear a mask? You know, are we going to open the schools? Should we keep them, closed? Do I have children? Am I afraid for my elders? Am I an elder? Am I, a person that is at risk? There's just so many options out there. And part of us, and this is where the inner child comes in, part of us is just running and trying to find our answers elsewhere. And we can get provoked elsewhere. But the truth is going to come when we sit with ourselves. One of the things I've been doing, and I talked about this when I came on after the George Floyd murder, and I talked about how I took that 8-minute and 46-second video and I watched it over and over and over again. And I did that while I was tapping. And for those of you who do not know what tapping is, it is a self-administered form of acupressure. And it's just tapping, can't find me on the square, tapping on the different endpoints. I'm not going to teach that today, but anytime I present anything, I'm always interfacing it with tapping, because tapping enables us to neutralize. When I'm tapping on the different endpoints, then we are neutralizing whatever's getting spiked within our energy field, within our meridian system. And so I watched that, not because I was wanting, to be self-punishing, but because I wanted to see the variety of feelings that were going to come up with that. And every time I watched it, it just inched me a little bit more into another perspective of it. And I had to go through the horror of it at first. Time and time again, it's like we didn't want to watch it because it was too painful. We don't want to have these conversations because they're too painful. But I kept going through it until I followed those threads of pain to the discomfort and the disbelief. There were so many friends of mine, and mostly white, I can't think of anybody that wasn't, that would say, this just had to be personal. This just couldn't happen unless it was personal. And I kept thinking, that's because we didn't have a receptor site for that kind of vile hate. And I remembered one time, for an 8-year period, I was involved with a man of color. And we had gone over to my sister's, like we often did, to house sit or whatever. And it was in kind of a plush environment in right outside of Berkeley. And it was 11 o'clock at night. It was raining. We were carrying stuff in, and it was like a 3-story place. And so I was upstairs, and I heard this ruckus downstairs, and I looked down, and Walter was down there, and there were 3 policemen with their guns pointing at him. And I was horrified. And I started screaming, what is happening? And I went down, and the neighbor had seen us moving in and out. It was dark. All they saw was that we were going back and forth from the car, thinking we were robbing it. And we came upstairs, and the only way those policemen believed that the story was true is that Walter and I had taken my niece and nephew on the Beta Breakers run, and we had pictures on the refrigerator that showed Walter and I with the 3 kids. And I said, we belong here. But it was horrifying to me. And that was the first time I realized what it meant to be the mother of a Black child and preparing them. I wasn't prepared for that. And I think the reason that we couldn't believe it was personal with George Floyd, and I don't know if it was or not, but we didn't have the receptor site to contemplate or comprehend that there could be that kind of animosity. And that's why we're being invited into that type of conversation now. But we have to show up for it. One of the things that I'm really following is Emmanuel Achios. I mentioned him earlier. He's doing a great series called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. That's where the Matthew McConaughey talk was. And he's doing such a beautiful job of having the conversation and talking about his side of the coin as well as his white guests. He had a family on and he invited the children to say something. And one of the children said, "Are you afraid of white people?" And his answer was beautiful. But the fact that that child could even ask that was beautiful. So I really encourage you to check that out. But there's 1,000 things on YouTube. One of the things I've been doing is every night, my husband goes for like an hour-long walk. And so I'm sitting there kind of 10 or 11, and I don't do this every night, but a lot of times I'll go to YouTube and I'll just kind of tune into it's like I tune into my higher self, and then I invite my inner child to sit on my lap. And I'll start scrolling through the different YouTubes. And it's all on there. There's Trump stuff, there's Biden stuff, there's, Black Lives Matter talk, there's, other stuff. It's like everything's there. There's Abraham is there, it's like a plethora of choices. And I just begin scrolling until my higher self sits on something. Sometimes it's something I don't want to watch. Like if it's something Trump did, that's difficult for me to watch. But if it goes on there, I watch it and I tap and I watch what comes up. That's a way that I'm beginning to really do my own inventory, is I'm fleshing it out. And I'm using my higher self to kind of dictate. Sometimes I get to go to Abraham and it's comforting. Sometimes, I go to the news and it's confusing. Sometimes I go to a coronavirus and it's about the mask. Okay, do I believe that? So sometimes it's just controversial. But every time I do that, it brings up a different set of feelings for me to begin to learn how to navigate. And that's what I really want to do in this series that I'm doing. And the next part of this series is on Wednesday night. It's an hour-long seminar where I'm actually going to bring in some little clips and have people watch them and then have them journal about it. And then that's where I'll tap. I wasn't able to really do that big of an experience here. One of the things I'd love to do is take people through that 8-minute and 46-second video, but I'm not going to do that on Zoom. I'm not going to do that unless I can do that with being in the presence of people so we can really process that. That would feel unethical for me to do that and not be able to track it. But just to help people begin to navigate in the conversations with their higher self. How do you bring that higher self in? Well, we have to make time for that. So many of us have gotten dulled that we don't even know how to get there anymore. And if you can't do it in meditation, get out in nature. You're going to find it in nature. Just get out, leave your cell phone at home. Don't have your conversations. Just go. And even if you take 5 minutes to just breathe in nature. If you can't do that, go stand in the sun. And just stand with your face in the sun and let Grandfather Sun give it to you. You can't be in the sunlight of Grandfather Sun without feeling elevated. You just have to have that first moment of elevation and then begin to follow that thread. How do you get in touch with your inner child? Anytime you have a negative feeling, it's from somewhere before, otherwise you would be able to manage it. It'd be discomfort, but not that collapse. When we go into reactivity, when we want to fight back or we want to retreat, then that's that inner child who's trying to find its way. We need to make that part of us feel safe. Watch your body. Having conversations with our body never lies. Our body, with its discomfort and its ailments, is going to be a thread to help us. That's what the Center of Functional Nutrition can help you with. That's what I mean. There's so many ways now that we can begin to follow the clues that we're being given spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally, that we can show up. And my part is helping you begin to learn how to navigate that, especially emotionally and spiritually. The other thing that I'm offering that I want people to know is just like, if you just want kind of a bird's eye view of what your soul is wanting you to focus on, then I'm offering a 20-minute kind of records reading, and then we'll do a tapping sequence. So I'm trying to make it available to people in whatever capacity that they can show up, so that you can begin to get a feel for where you go with this. But one of the biggest things I want you to leave this conversation with is, yes, be inspired for these conversations, but watch for when you go into your shame, when you go into your grief, when you go into your blame, and then back up a little bit. Because if you're going after it and you don't have the skills at that moment to deal with it, give yourself a break from it. And I don't mean a break with ignoring, but give yourself a break. We don't have to be engaged all the time, but we don't want to be disengaged completely, because we're going to miss a great opportunity for growth, and a great opportunity to expand our heart, and a great opportunity to contribute. So I invite any conversation that people want to have at this point, but thank you for letting me share this version of my truth with you.
Thank you very much, Cathryn. That was an opening, I think, for all of us to
Where's Russell?
engage. So if anyone has any questions, comments for Cathryn, it looks like, I think, Mary. Yeah, go for it, Mary.
We can't hear her.
We can't hear you, Mary.
Just has to unmute herself.
I am unmuted.
Oh, there you go. Now we can hear you.
Yeah, I am unmuted. Yeah. So it's fabulous to be here. Good morning to everyone. Cathryn, thank you so much. I'm really glad I got up and got over to the coffee house, got on my plane and everything. And I'm in Minneapolis. I'm actually in St. Louis Park, which is southwest of Minneapolis. And man, your talk is just, the timing is so great. I went to a farmer's market yesterday in Minneapolis, and I haven't been in the city much since the lockdown with the pandemic, and then since the George Floyd murder. I haven't been around much in the city. And I went to a farmer's market, which is on the same block as. Hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, it was just interesting to be there. And I got 2 gorgeous bouquets of flowers, and then I drove past the Target and past this and past that. And it was interesting just to be in that vibe. And it was very, very hot.
Mm-hmm.
And I came home and my energy was zapped.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, not making a big deal of it, but I want to be responsible for it. There was an impact. And I love, oh my God, I wrote down something you said. I wrote down a lot of what you said, but just something about the receptor, like receptor side, like we're not necessarily set up and conscious of how to deal with what's coming at us, because either historically we haven't had to or whatever. So this has been useful. And I haven't tapped in a while, but I'm going to, I'm interested in engaging, and I work with a group of Black girls ages grades 9 through 12.
Nice.
Tapping would be good for them. So I'll give you a call and check in with you. But this just is so timely, and I'm really glad. I'm glad for the time we're in. I think it's an incredible time to be alive.
Mhm.
And people ask me how I'm doing. I say, I'm magnificent. I just have to keep centered as soul. I don't feel like I have a soul. I feel like I am soul. So I haven't been out marching. I haven't been out protesting. I haven't been out part of the cleanup. I actually am part of a planning of it. We're doing a very big program. It's part of an online auction, but we're also on a live concert because I'm an entertainer, singer, songwriter, actor.
Mhm.
So I'm the talent coordinator for the local happening.
Mm.
And it's called We Come in Peace,
Mhm.
the revitalization of Minneapolis. So it's a big fundraiser to start being able to contribute to the revitalization.
Mhm.
So just being here this morning is just fat with all of you, but particularly with you, Cathryn, and your subject matter, what you're putting into the universe, what you're adding to what's already here. So I'm very much empowered and very much inspired to keep doing what I've been doing is staying centered
Right.
and radiating love as soul. That's my contribution to the planet right now.
Right.
Radiating love as soul. So
Right.
thank you for your contribution, honey.
Thank you.
And thank you all.
Mhm.
Thanks.
And Minneapolis is a place to be right now because a lot's happening.
Exactly. That's how I feel. There's no accident that I'm here. So I was gonna move to Florida last, but I'm right here in the midst of it. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you, Mary, for your words. Is there anyone else who would like to ask Cathryn a question or make a comment? Just raise your hand, unmute yourself, give me a wave. Oh, Carol Patty, yes, go for it.
Okay. Hi. I'm just so grateful to get on these calls and to hear you again, Cathryn. I actually called you and asked you for an appointment.
Yeah, I have your message.
Good. It was so validating to hear everything that you said because you're right. There is a lot of back and forth feelings that are going on, and sometimes it's really hard to manage all of that. Like one day you feel this way, one day you feel that way.
Right. Mhm.
So I liked so much how you said to just be present with what comes up, and really try to identify it and to work with it. And of course, if you do tapping, that's a great tool. So it just validated for me because I'm constantly in contact with people who are of all persuasions. Let's put it that way. And it's I just try to stay centered in what I believe and not get into debates, not avoid that approach
Mhm.
because I don't think it goes anywhere.
Mhm.
And we just have to. I think it's about educating ourselves and educating others in whatever way that we can do that.
Right. Right. I had an interesting conversation with a very dear friend of mine the other day who actually just moved to Nashville, and we're very in sync with a lot of stuff. But as we started talking, it's like our experiences were so different and our views were so different. But what was beautiful about the conversation was that neither one of us felt the need to debate or to convince. It was like, oh, interesting, you go there with that. Oh, yeah, see, I see it this way. And it was just one of those really healthy, uncomfortable conversations about differences that was comfortable. You know what I mean? Because we both had enough respect for each other's personal experiences to see things differently. You know what I mean? So I think that's what we're going for individually. I think part I'd love to see more of the quote unquote encounter groups happening, except we can't do that now because of all the lockdowns. But the versions like this are coming up. So I agree with what you're both saying. It's a very exciting time. If we're willing to show up for it, it's really an exciting time to be on the planet where we can make a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I did see Hank and Kathleen. I saw you raise your hand. If you want to just unmute yourself.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, you're great. Thank you.
Mari, I really enjoyed everything you said. And I wrote down some things. Catherine, I really enjoyed some of these phrases, social allergies.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and we are so provoked wherever we go. And it also made me think of a family unit, where even provoked within the family, both of us had to separate ourselves from that. That was we had to kind of break a cycle, because discussion was not to happen at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been very difficult for us, because we love our family, but we had to make, rather than to be provoked every time we felt bad they were being provoked, we thought, what was wrong with us? And so therefore, when you said internal referencing rather than the external referencing, it made me, and then you said, watch out for the self going into shame, grief, and blame. It happens within the family unit for whatever reason. I think Hank and I have always been the soul that wanted to talk things out and not have to go there. Our parents were part of the World War II situation, and so I know they had their traumas to deal with. And therefore, if they didn't talk about it, it wasn't going to happen in the family unit. And so I wonder if that's a piece of what's going on today, because not all families are bad. Not all, there's always some, so I guess I just appreciate what people are saying and how you are bringing us into the internal. Let's check ourselves, take our own temperature.
Right.
And because we were provoked by another white person this week, and it was, I didn't know what to do other than we just asked her to stop, and she wouldn't. And
her own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't our agenda, it was hers. So, yeah.
Right.
So,
And I think the beauty in that is it's ideal if we can have those kinds of conversations that I was talking about, that I had with my friend. That's the epitome of expansion. But it's also useful to, when we can't have the external satisfaction like that we go, okay, so what was my trigger? What was my hotspot? That's why I watch those YouTubes. What's my hotspot here? Ooh, God, I hate to see that. What is that? That meta process of observing our response and then following the thread of our response to its origin, which will take us back to the inner child. It'll take us back into our families, and it'll take us back to the history of our soul if we want to go, expand there. So it's endless what we can do with it. And there's always an opportunity for us to make use of whatever our responses are.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Hank and Kathleen, for bringing that in. And what we're going to do now, again, I just want to acknowledge Cathryn for just being a tremendous force in our community of good, and giving us the tools and the opportunities to go within, or as she says it much better than me, but to go vertical, bring those moments into our lives where we can engage in these conversations with ourselves so that we can then go out in the world and better have those communications and that listening for other people, for all people. So Cathryn, thank you. For everyone here, in the invite that we sent out, Cathryn's information is right there. And as she said, this is really just an opening for a much more in-depth conversation that she's going to continue to have. So please do reach out to her for more information about that. And if you have any trouble doing that, just call one of us and we'll make sure that you get connected with her. And before we leave today, we do have, of course, we love bringing in some, what we like to call good news, or just a quick share from someone in our wonderful community. And we actually get to hear from a very, very special person in my life, my mother, Megan. and she's going to grace us with some summer recipes and some foods that I think we would all enjoy very much, especially on a hot day. So Megan, I will transfer over to you and take it away.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Yes, food brings us all into a landscape where we can communicate and sit, even with social distancing, and enjoy wonderful conversation and delicious food. So today, I actually thought I'd talk a little bit about the cucumber. The cucumber sometimes gets missed, but on these summer days, the cucumber is so delicious, so refreshing, and it does have a cooling effect. So most of us know the European cucumber and the pickling cucumber, and I don't have one of those, but there's the regular lowly field cucumber. And then we have recently these little mini cucumbers, and they do not have seeds. The cucumber has been around for a long time, for about 3,000 years, and it was thought to be first cultivated in India, and then the Romans brought it over. So yes, it was first cultivated in a very hot climate, because the cucumber has a very cooling, energetically it has a very cooling and refreshing response. So I cut up a few cucumbers. I hope you can all see them, because believe it or not, can everybody see this?
Yes, we can.
Whatever kind of cut you do actually affects the taste, and how, if you're doing any kind of, putting any kind of salt, pepper, oil on it, it absorbs in a different way. So the cut is really important. Sometimes it's just nice to have a slice of cucumber with it. Sometimes I put some herb mare on it and a little tad of ground up lemon pepper. And just to have that crunch, that delicateness as an appetizer is delicious. Can also be cut up like this. And then of course you could cut up some cilantro, some parsley if you can see it, and of course some dill. But those all they're just very simple. So the importance is simplicity, but each of those different things add a little bit of a different taste. So you could do that for 5 days and have a different taste with the cucumber 5 different days. Another dish that we love here is a dish, and it's just cutting up this little cucumber and putting a little bit of omaboshi vinegar on it, which is made from the pickled ume plum and its leaves. And it's delicious and it's refreshing. So you cut up the cucumber, you put a little bit of omaboshi on it, let it sit for half an hour, 45 minutes, and wow, it's an accessory to any meal. One other quick, simple recipe. Can you all see this? This is again just cut up cucumbers. I put a little bit of goat cheese, and then using this zester, I put a little bit of lemon zest on top with a little bit, just drizzle on top a little bit of avocado oil, and you can use mirin. Mirin actually has alcohol in it, so you might not want to use that, but a light rice wine is also delicious. And there you go, cucumber. It's inexpensive, it's refreshing, there is some nutritional value to it. Let's see, it's got vitamin K, vitamin C, magnesium, so it's refreshing, delicious, easy, inexpensive, and you can do it in a whole assortment of ways. So thank you, and thank you, cucumber.
Thank you, Megan. That's wonderful. And if anyone, of course, wants more specifics or, a written recipe, just send us an email, give us a call, and we'd be happy to share that specifically with you. So thank you, Megan, for bringing that wonderfully light, refreshing, easy recipe to us all. And for everyone, we're just so grateful to our community, our growing community. We're doing something very exceptional here together. And it's something that was started in a very difficult time, a very confusing and period in human history that we've all gone through. And it's been incredible for me to go through it with all of you, at least on a weekly basis. And we're going to continue to do this every week and bring more and more people into this wonderfully growing community. So thank you, Cathryn, for everything that you brought to us today, for being our guide through a lot of what's going on. And Megan, for your wonderful, refreshing recipes. And to everyone else, for just locking arms together to engage in being a force for good in the world. So thank you, everyone. Please unmute, say hello, say goodbye. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend.
Have a wonderful week. And standing vertical is beautiful, Cathryn.
Thank you so much. This is awesome. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.